and Shri had been coming there. But I'd never heard of Shri. I'd never seen her poster.
Jai Shri Mataji.
Shri.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manish Singh, Uncle, thank you for joining us from America while we are here at our Blossom Farm, our national centre in the heart of the universe in England. And thank you for your patience to have this interview, which we have been trying to since the afternoon here. Apparently it's lunchtime there, but it's kind of bedtime here. So thank you for bearing with us. Would you please share with us, how old were you? Where were you when you got your self-realization, and what was your first meeting with Shri Mataji like?
Happy to share that. I was in the first year of law in Delhi University, and I had been seeking, and there used to be a place called Gandhi Bhavan, where I used to go and do Hatha Yoga every year, every morning actually. And I'd been going there for a good 3 years, 4 years. I had never heard of Shri, had never seen her photograph. And then it was time. And so I saw her poster and said Kundalini Awakening, and I wasn't too sure what that meant. But I was like, I'm going to go. And so it was, I remember this date distinctly. It was 13th of March, 1979. And Shri walked in, and she was very different from the average guru you'd see, who was, more grave than grave itself. And here she was walking with her disciples, with Sahaja Yogis, and she was laughing and smiling, and she looked like a motherly figure. And then she went and sat, she spoke. I can't remember the details, though later I did listen to the audio of the session, and she talked about many things. And towards the end of the program, like everybody, she said, put out your hands. And Gandhi Bhavan is an amphitheater, so it has a dome-shaped roof, but the sides are open. And when she said, okay, if you're feeling a cool breeze, put up your hand. And I said, I was feeling a cool breeze, and I'm like, there must be some wind blowing from somewhere. So I looked around, and none of the plants, nothing was moving, but I could feel it. And at that point, the cool breeze stopped. But I had enjoyed what I had heard, and I knew I was going to come back. And this is a funny story, but somebody came to me and said, "Are you feeling it?" And I said, "Yes." And they kind of worked on me. And then they said, "Will we see you tomorrow?" And I said, "No," because I had booked a movie ticket to see Saturday Night Fever with some friends. And so I said, I'm going to see that movie tomorrow, but I'll be back the following day. And so they probably thought it was odd, but I was just being honest. And so the following day, I went for the movie. Next day, I went back to the meeting. And this time the meeting was at 10 Ashoka Road. And I felt it so intensely, so intensely. I remember Gregoire came and he was talking to me and said, have you got it? And he's looking at my eyes and he's like, oh yeah, your eyes are dilated. So yes, you got it. But it was like the vibrations were just pouring into me. And that was the most amazing experience. And after that, I had no questions. I just knew this was it. And so that was the start of my Sahaj journey. And, because I had been seeking, and so I would go and see a guru or two, but I never stayed anywhere because I probably didn't get anything. So that's why I didn't stay. And so my parents thought this is another one of his fads. Let's see how long it lasts. Well, it's been lasting now. It's 25, so 46 years. It's one of those things. It's an eternal imprint on your soul. And I've never looked at anything, and this has been my life since.
Absolutely. Thanks to Shri Mataji. Can you remind us, please, what time of the year was it? When exactly? Which year is this? And was this
This is
after the birthday puja, Shri Mataji, or about around?
no, so this was before birthday puja because it was on the 13th of March, 1979. And coincidentally, in India they have this thing of getting a horoscope made. So my parents had got my horoscope made, and it said your life is going to change when you turn 22. And 16th of March, I turned 22. So from one perspective, that prophesied that my life would change at 22, was very accurate because I met Shrimati 3 days before, and I would say I really felt my self-realization fully on the 15th of March. And so I was so much in joy and so much, it was like I just felt that I had touched a different, um, how would I say, state within myself. And I remember being a student, you had limited means. And next day happened to be my birthday, and I bought a box of sweets and I took it to the meeting. And, when it was my turn, because those days we used to line up and person by person, we would go at her feet. We actually put our hands under her feet and put our head on her feet. And so after I did that, I offered that to her, and she looked at me and she said, this for me? And I said, yes, Shimaji. And she said, oh, no, no, it's too much. So she had a little bit, and then she said, distribute to everyone. So I did that. Um, but that was the start of my journey. Later on, I think a few weeks later, is when we had the birthday celebration. I think the auditorium, if I'm not mistaken, there's an auditorium by name of Kamini Auditorium, I think. And that's where we had the birthday celebration. So that's how my journey with Sahaja Yoga started.
Oh, that's amazing. Touching the feet of Shri Adi Shakti herself on your birthday.
Yeah, that was,
Do you want to elaborate on that? What did it feel like?
I can just tell you that I was literally like I was hollow within myself. There used to be a Sahaja Yoga booklet, which we used to have at those times. It had Srimati's photograph on the front, and with that, they would give the black and white photograph of Shrimati. And then inside, it was like a folded thing, and it had all the information about the chakras and about, the deities and, what is the problem and this and that. I guess I had just been waiting for it because I literally knew that within a day. I just memorized it, and as I was reading through it, to me it was like, yeah, 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 this is it. This just makes sense. And it was just fantastic, Um, I can tell you that I probably started foot soaking just within 2 days. Once they told me to foot soak, I foot soaked. And then I would make sure every morning I would wake up in the morning, I would go walking in the garden, I walk barefoot on the grass and I look at the sky. It was literally like, I was just being cleared out. And it was just, it was something which I could never have imagined. So that memory resides very strongly inside me, and that's the experience which uh, sustained me. And Sahaja Yoga, as I think it's true of most of us, is the experience that we experienced with Shamaji. So was very fortunate that those days she used to conduct the program herself. And so at 10 Ashoka Road, she used to do 2 sessions every day, morning and evening. Morning, of course, I was in school, so I would be attending classes. But in the evening, I would go for the program. And the first weekend, I went for the afternoon session also. And two of my first people or friends in Sahaja Yoga who um, came and kind of helped me and guided me. One was Avdut Pai, and the second was Tony from London. And so Abdul said to me, why are you going back? And I was like, no, 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 I don't want to be trouble or burden to anyone. He said, no, 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 just sleep here. So in the Ten Ashoka Road, the way these old bungalows were, there was a central room, and then, around it were other rooms. So one of the rooms was Shimaji's. And so I went and slept in the central area. And I remember I woke up at some point in the evening and I saw Shimaji come out, and I just saw so much light come with her. It was not any kind of a hallucination, but it was, I could see her, but I could see also a lot of light coming from her. So that was my first, you might could say, experience of miracle in Sahaja Yoga. And then a few days later, I asked one of the older Sahaja Yogis, his name was Uncle Karaka. He come from Mumbai with her. And I said, Uncle, would it be possible for me to meet Shimaji? And he was like, okay, let me see. Then he came back and said, okay, you can go inside for 5 minutes. And Shimaji was sitting inside with Sonu and Anand, her grandchildren, and they were playing around, and she was sitting nicely, silently. And she looked at me and said, how are you feeling? And I said, I just feel wonderful. And Shimaji said, okay, good. And we didn't have much of a conversation, actually. She closed her eyes, and I was just sitting there, absorbing vibrations from her. And dutifully, after 5 minutes, I got up to leave. And Shimaji said, where are you going? And I said, well, Shimaji, they'd asked me to come out. She said, no, 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 keep sitting. So I sat, and I have no idea how long I sat. But that was my first interaction with her one-on-one, and with both Sonu and Anand, and I've known them since. So that was the beginning of Sahaja Yoga in Delhi. That time there weren't so many people, so we used to get so many opportunities to get to see her. Her daughter, Sadhana Didi, used to live in Sarvapriya Vihar, and so we would go to her house, even when Shimaji wasn't there. But of course, when Shimaji was there, she used to sleep on the terrace. And so we got so many opportunities to sit with her, and there'd be just 3, 4 of us sitting with her till like 1 or 2 in the morning and talk to her about all kinds of things. We asked her all kinds of questions about the Bermuda Triangle, and she explained to us what had happened, that, the slaves had been thrown overboard, and so so many of them had been killed that way. And so when these clouds happen, it's those lost souls who are kind of taking their revenge, and that's what happens. So many other stories she would tell us. And we'd ask her many questions, which I would say today, you look back and you say, I can't believe it that I had the audacity to ask her those questions. But, as a very patient mother, she would, talk to us, explain things to us. And, that's how things were built within us. And it was the start of a wonderful journey of Sahaja Yoga.
That's amazing. Can you share with us? I mean, this reminds me of those early those days in India where you would sleep on the
You know, at that time
terrace
in
in the
Delhi,
summer month. Oh, Shri Mataji, there's more con
yeah, well, um, Sushmita, you're breaking a little bit. So this was normally, um, March, um, February, because February, towards the latter part of February, things would start to warm up in Delhi. And so many times Shrimati would be in Delhi at that time. Normally, I think it was to be sometime early April that she would leave to go back to England. Okay. Yeah, we connected again. So
Yes, yes. Please tell us
okay.
about how those nice summer evenings and night and your conversations with the
Right. So I told you the story about the Bermuda Triangle. Also, what happened is that um, when I look back, till the time I came to Sahaja Yoga in Delhi, um, more of the people in Delhi were, I would say, more conservative, traditional Indians. Um, you know, then some of us, like for example, me, I'd gone to school with the Irish brothers and nuns. So they were very particular about our English and how we spoke it. And we had a little bit of I think we had a little bit of a thing about it that we spoke English well. Um, and so we had a little ego about it, I would say, a subtle ego. But then I realized soon, when Shimadi would speak in Hindi, that, for some reason we had neglected our own native tongue. And so Shimaji used to talk about this author, Sharat Chandra. Devdas and all these movies are written by him. And she used to talk about him very highly. And she said, in her um, estimation, he was the most literary person because the way he could describe relationships and the nuances between people, nobody else had been able to do it so well. So once I started working, I used to travel a fair amount. And so what I did was that I started buying books about Sharat Chandra, different books, and I started reading Hindi, and that's how I improved my Hindi. And once that improved, I realized the benefit of Hindi because the script or the alphabet is the same as Sanskrit. And all our scriptures and all, the mantras are in Sanskrit. And, you can feel the difference of it. So, without telling us that, you guys have a ego about things, very subtly, she would teach us all these various things, and we started getting more to our roots. Tell you that, in the early years, we had the opportunity of traveling with her a little bit in Maharashtra when she would do the India tours. And so we were once traveling with her and we were going through the ghats. I think we were going to Sholapur and Kolhapur. And she suddenly said, stop the car. And so she looked out at the hills and she said, they're very barren. And she just looked at them like this. And, it's said in the Devi Bhagavatam that when uh, the goddess breathes, things came to life. And when she saw, life came into being. So, those kind of things, she would do it, and then, um, I was told that, vegetation has started coming over there. It's just merely her glancing at it, those kind of things. So many things we experienced. I'll tell you of a story which will make you laugh, but it's humorous, but at the same time, it was a lesson too. So I came from the Sikh religion. So when I came to Sahaja Yoga, I used to wear a turban. And so this was in 1981. And I was working for the Oberoi Hotels. I was doing a program in hotel management with them. And so sometimes I used to feel like pressure on my head. So I once said to Shimaji, I feel this pressure on my head. And she looked at me and she laughed. And she said, this thing that you wear, because of that, you get that pressure. So I said, okay. So she didn't tell me that, you should take it off or anything of the kind. She just said that to me. But I understood it. And so being a Sikh, wearing a turban is a big deal to Sikh families because they associate that if you're wearing a turban, then you're a Sikh. If you're not wearing one, then you're not. And anyway, so I tried to do all kinds of things. So I told my parents, I'm getting this pressure on my head. And so my mom actually came down to Delhi and arranged to see the top neurosurgeon. The guy examined me and said, there's nothing wrong with him. So I was like, okay, this ploy is not working. But I was a very determined guy. Once I decided I'm doing something, I did it. So that year, Shimati was going to go back to London. And so there used to be a friend of mine, his name was Hush. And I said to him, Shimati was leaving that evening. Shimati went to take her afternoon nap. I said, Hush, we going? He said, going where? I said, we're going to the barber shop. He said, are you sure? I said, yes. So we went and I got a haircut. And then we came back to Sarvapriya Vihar, Sadhan Didi's house. And when Shimaji woke up in the afternoon and came out of the house, out of her room, she looked at me and she smiled. And I went to her feet and she said, today Guru Nanak is very pleased because you're the first one who's cut his hair knowing that he's doing the right thing. So by no means am I saying that, Shimaji said, go ahead, cut your hair and all the rest of it. But it was, that wearing a turban doesn't make you a Sikh. It is innately are you that. You look at what people are doing, and especially you can see in the immigrant population in the UK, US, all these people, the amount they drink and, some of the ways they behave. I'm not saying everybody does that, but quite a few people do that. And yet, you wear the turban, and that's an insult to Guru Nanak. So, that was one of those stories and lessons from that time. But another time I was sitting with her and talking to her, and this is another story. This is from 1995, not 95, sorry, 1998. It was Shrimati's 75th birthday, and I was in Delhi at that time. I had the opportunity to spend about 5-6 months with her. So on her birthday, what do you give Adi Shakti? She's the source of everything. So I said, okay, let me get her Guru Granth Sahib in Hindi. And also there's a book which was written by the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, which is called as Chandi Diwar, which is really Durga Shaptshati. It's really that. So I offered to her and I offered these books at her feet. And I remember Shimaji took it and put it to her heart. And then I recited a verse which was written by Guru Gobind Singh, which said, Main hu param purak ka dasa, that I am the servant of God Almighty. Dekhan aaya jagat tamasha, I came to see this play of the world. Hemkunt parbat hai jahan, there's this peak in the Himalayas called Hemkunt. Saptashrings shobhat hai taha, that it is surrounded by these beautiful 7 peaks. Kari mein tapasya bhari, I did a lot of penance. Mahakalika Aradhi, and I meditated on Shri Mahakalika. So when I recited that verse, Shimaji looked at me and said, Wo to hum hai, that's me. So why don't they understand? And I said, Shimaji, that I think is beyond my capacity to say why they don't understand. But, it's very evident from that verse and the very fact that he wrote this book called Durga Chandi Diwar, that he was actually a worshipper of the goddess. And if you look at it from another perspective, he said that, she said at that time, it was required because between Guru Gobind Singh and Shivaji Maharaj, they were fighting Aurangzeb and he was forcibly converting people. And so he told people that I will give you a form that you cannot hide. And now if you look at it, why did he give the form of a lion? Because that is the Vahan of the goddess. And so he said, I'll make you like a lion. So, you'll have a beard, you don't cut your hair, you'll have, a kirpan, that's a sword, that's like the claws of a lion, to protect yourself and protect others. So, it was, and then she said to me, this is something, Sushmita, I want to share with everyone. She said, it is possible that in Sahaja Yoga, we might have to go to a time when you might have to do regimentation, and we'll also have to take some kind of a form or some kind of a, warrior-like thing. And she said, the last word she said to me, and when it's time to lift the sword, उस वक्त चूक मत जाना, then don't fail at that time. So, yes, she said this to me very clearly. So all I'm saying is, that with all the incarnations, I mean, they all were for peace. But in the path of peace, sometimes you have to take to arms when it's required. So.
Yes. The vibrations were so amazing when you were reading out that, shall we say, the shlok
Yes.
of Chandi, Diwar, and which Shri Mataji liked so much. And in so many words, but she has, in a way, clearly given a warning that there might be a time for Sahaja Yogis to be like warriors, to maybe uphold the dharmas, because that's what we are seeing all around us, that all the valencies, all the dharmas are getting atrophied with time. So just before we progress to the next question, tell us, you got your realization as a 22-year-old student. What were the miracles, or how do you think Sahaja Yoga helped you that might be a kind of an inspiration for young people watching today, or the students in?
I'd say this, that so of course I see a lot of children growing up in Sahaja Yoga, and they have all kinds of pressures. I work in the school system in Los Angeles, so I'm the director for the food services division. We have like about 1,500 schools, and we provide meals to children every day. So I visit schools frequently, and I see how it is, even in middle schools, so 6th grade onwards, there's no sense of innocence and chastity. I mean, everything which can break the norm is there. So it's not a good environment. And one of the things Shrimati said is the most important thing is to protect your innocence and chastity, and that for the children also. So Sahaja Yoga is the only way I can see that children could maintain their chastity as well as their innocence in this world today. Even in India, things have, changed. So what we went to school where there was a lot of discipline, there's still discipline, there's still respect for teachers. Over here, I mean, the lack of respect for teachers and how, teachers literally have to manage around with children is a very difficult thing. So we were, in a sense, westernized by those standards, but of course we had not experienced the kinds of things which were going on in the West at that point of time. From that perspective, we were still more naive. But it really helped to make me what it is. As I was telling you, I said the minute I got my realization, I started understanding the benefits and the basics of what Indian culture is and why it is important and why certain things should be done a particular way. I'll give you an example. I got married in 1983 in Saj. Those days, Shimaji would select our partners and she would say, okay, so I've chosen this one for you. And there wasn't really much conversation beyond it. And we used to say, yes, Shimaji. And, we used to go and get married. So I used to live with my parents at that time. And so we got married and we living with my parents. So a year later, I said to Shimaji, I think my father used to, like to drink every evening, and I would say before Sahaja Yoga, I would join him, not regularly. I would probably drink maybe once or twice a year, but he would drink every day. I said to Shimaji, I'm thinking maybe I should move out and, find a space for myself and all that. And she looked at me and said two words, you've come to Sahaja Yoga to make, not to break. And that was the end of the conversation. So I'm going to say this to you. Sahaja Yoga is, and so Sahaja Yogis must have that sense of understanding, the respect for our elders, also the tolerance level, which doesn't mean, so on the flip side, I would say, but they weren't into any false gurus or anything of the kind. I know of other people who had those problems, and Shimaji would say, okay, fine, you need to find another place. But the reason for that is that you've got to build a community and you have to bring people up. Now, my children are grown up now. They have children themselves. I'm a grandfather, and they grew up in Los Angeles. They had their beginning formative years of education in Delhi, but then when they were in middle school, high school, they basically went to school over here. And so one of the things which he said, and this is for parents, that there's no such thing as privacy. You must know everything they're doing, and these days, you give people phones and all the rest of it. Parents need to look at the phones. This concept of, oh, you have your privacy and all that, that's rubbish. My daughter, when she was finishing high school, she traveled to Europe every year. She went to Cabela, and then she would travel in Europe. I knew exactly where she was staying because these were Sahaja Yogi families and friends of ours. And I told her one simple thing. I said, don't do anything to break my trust, because once you break that trust, to get it back is going to be very difficult. And so I'm happy for the fact that she did not break that trust. But so what I'm saying is, even when you give children freedom, you still watch it, because then they don't have that maturity, not that sense and that wisdom, which comes with age. And so as a parent, you have to do your job, and you must do it, so that they grow up to be good Sahaja Yogis, because I see so many children who are born to Sahaja Yogis who are lost. And I'm like, why? These were never our children. They are her children. It's our responsibility to keep them all right and to go. And sometimes you have to be tough and you have to scold. So my daughter, when she was 25, she turned to me and she said, Dad, you were such a tough cookie. I said, yeah, I know that. And she said, but today I can thank you because you were tough, and that kind of kept me in line and kept me where I am today. So I'm grateful to you. You can be friends, but never forget your parents, and you have to do your job as a parent.
Absolutely. There's so many things that resonates with, and it reminded me of my own parents, and that Shri Mataji told you that, that you have to keep an eye on the children, and there's nothing called privacy, because that is what is in the modern culture, that, you're an individual and that has to be valued. So and the trust that parents place, because when I went from a small place like Lucknow to study marketing management in Delhi, it was the trust of my parents and the faith they had in me that, we would be on the right track. And by Mother's grace, that is how it happened, despite, the challenges that one faces. So it's really nice that you've shared with us that Shri Mataji told you to look at, to keep an eye on the children so closely, even if it means looking at their journals or phone messages. Now it's a lot of social media pressure these days for little children, forget the growing or grown-up children. So and it is so important to sort of support them. Any other advice that comes to your mind that Shri Mataji has told you that you'd like to share with us, please?
Yes. So, she from time to time, she would tell so many things, but I'll share a couple of stories with you, which I think would be beneficial for people to hear. So in 1981, we graduated from hotel school, and then we were going to start working in the Oberoi system. And so when we graduated, this friend of mine, Harsh, unfortunately, he's not in Sahaja Yoga anymore. People do their own things, so things happen. We went and bought a sari for her. And I remember we went to offer it to her, and she looked at me and said, "This for me?" And I said, "Yes, Shimaji." And she kind of went like this. And I just said to her, I said, "Shimaji, this much right even we have on you." And she just kept quiet for a minute, and she smiled. And then she said to me, she said, "In this lifetime, I have decided that everything that a human being goes through, I will go through that." And this time will come when you can come and take care of me. Yes, she said that. And this was in 81. She started going quiet around 2006, 2005. And, at that point of time, you would see her like Shimaji's like this, and sometimes you'd see her with her mouth half open and, she's going on the wheelchair and all that. I would say this to you. I remembered what she had told me at that point of time. And I always felt that this is also one of her plays and one of her mayas. And so give you an example of what happened. So this was in 2009, I think 2009, yeah. And we were in Rome for Christmas puja. And so Shimaji was basically, seeing all the proceedings going on from her room, and everything was happening in the banquet hall down below. And she'd been sitting like that. People had come and shown her all kinds of things. "Oh, we are doing this and that," and Sasipi Singh, "See what all they're doing for your Sahaja Yoga." And, there was a movement about, kind of going to Sahaja Yoga, Sahaja Yoga meditation. It was Sahaja meditation. I think the yoga, they were taking it out, and all the rest of it was going on. And Shimaji was sitting there and just no reaction, no interaction whatsoever. And so that evening, Bhajan Supari was going to perform. And so all these people came, went, showed their stuff. There was no interaction from her side. And the minute we said to her, "Shimaji, Bhajan Supari is going to perform," she was up. She was alert. For those 2.5 hours that he performed, she was watching him intently, watched the whole thing. And it was like, this was a big play going on. In 2008, I think there were 2 occasions that I went to Cabela and I cooked for her. And so one day I cooked and I went in and I was serving her. She was sitting there by herself. So I took the food, I just was putting it down, and she looked at me and she said, "Igde." And I was just standing, and she looked me up and down, like you have the thing which says Devi Kataksh, Kataksh, Nirikshan. I was having a full scan going on. And I knew what was happening, and I was just standing. So this idea that Oshimaji was like this or that. It was just another one of her plays. It was just one of her plays, and she could do whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted.
What do you
Uh,
True, true. The Adi Shakti herself, and that was the Mahamaya form in full.
yeah.
I don't have enough words to really express that. But if one may ask, what did you cook for Shrimataji?
With my background in hotel management, so many times Shivaji would sit and suddenly say to me, okay, start writing. So I would start writing and she would give me recipes. Now, one question in your questionnaire was, what have you had, what Shivaji cooked? I'll tell you, I have not eaten, maybe once I ate a matar pulao, a peas pulao in Delhi, which she had cooked. Otherwise, I never got the opportunity to eat food which had been cooked by her. But on the flip side, I cooked for her so many times, I can't even tell you how many times. Many of the things were things which she had taught me. Of course, I knew other things, so I would occasionally cook those too. And people have asked me, so what was Shrimati's favorite thing? And I said, look, really and truly, um, she would really not have such thing as a favorite. But if something had to be said, well, she would say a couple of things. So aaj yakhni pulao bana do. Make yakhni pulao. And she used to enjoy that. If she was having visitors and people over for dinner, she would say, aaj puri nikal dena. Make puris today. She used to enjoy kebabs, so we would make kebabs for her. She would also enjoy dahi bhallas a lot. Um, and so on occasion she would say, "Oh, Haldiram se dahi bhalle mangwa lo," you know. Um, so, but she knew good food. Let me tell you, she knew good food. Um, but for herself, whatever you offered her. And of course, she would tell us, she'd say, okay, I mean, right now, if you're cooking for me, only use mustard oil, for example, or only use ghee. Later on, the thing came from the doctors, and we were cooking for her using olive oil, which is very unlike cooking Indian food. And I cooked for her many different things. I cooked for her Chinese, I cooked Western, I did all that. And sometimes she would laugh and she said, मैं कोई ग्रेस थोड़ा हूँ, and one would just, go with the flow of it. So in terms of food, I would say she really knew good food, but she was not picky at all. I think so long as you cooked from the heart, it was cooked with love, it was acceptable to her. Once when Sonu was getting married, her in-laws were coming and it was a Tuesday. So that was, how Indians can be vegetarians on Tuesdays. And so Shimaji said, oh, her father-in-law is a vegetarian, so what should we make? And I said, Shimaji, whatever you say, we'll make that. And she said, okay, make, uh, what's it called? Vangi bhat. And I'm like, Shimaji, I have no idea how to make vangi bhat, what it is. And she started giving me the recipe. And I was like, bengan and rice. Oh my God. I mean, bengans were never my favorite as such. And I was like, okay, I have no idea what this is, but you're saying so, Shimaji, so we'll make it. It was so good. And after that, I've made it so many times, so many times. Um, so I would say to you that if it's cooked with love, it's cooked with that right attitude, then it'll come out right. And so she used to tell me, she said, you know, ye sari aurtein hai na, all these women, teach them how to cook. And I would say on occasion I've tried to do that, but uh, people want a quick thing. Even my daughter's like, it's supposed to get done in 10 minutes. And I said, no, good cooking, you have to follow the steps. You can't just go and that, because her in-laws were from Lucknow. So So I'll tell you this story also. So this was in 1990. In April, it was actually Shimaji's marriage anniversary, 7th of April in Delhi. And so Shimaji was resting in the afternoon with Sir CP, and she called
Which
me in.
year is this?
This is 1990.
Which year?
1990. So I was rubbing her feet, and so Sir CP is telling me that, when we got married, because Shimaji came from a Christian family, the connotations of India in India was, a Christian means they're trying to wear lesser clothes and all the rest of it. So when the family heard that he'd married her and she was Christian, they were like, don't know what to expect. Somebody's going to come in a frock or whatever it is. And here Shimaji comes with this big bindi on her forehead, and people are like, okay, we didn't know that. And he said that, she she made Yakhani Pulao, for the whole family, because you have that little ceremony that the new daughter-in-law will cook for and she said it became the talk of the house because they used to live in a joint family. And then I'll tell you certain things which Shimaji told me. And this is Sir CP telling me that, the women in the house never could go out of the house without the men. It was, a little bit of a Islamic setup. And so these women never took care of them because all they did was cook, clean, or take care of the children and take care of the house. And so, the heels of their feet would have cuts. And so without anyone saying anything to Shimaji, she just had that compassion for them. She took desi ghee. I think she said they put saffron in it. With that, she massaged the feet of these ladies. Guess what happened? They loved her with such a passion because nobody had ever shown them that love and concern. And so I would see over the years that when Sir CP's relatives would come to meet Shimaji, meet them, they would actually come to meet her, not him. They wouldn't come to meet him. So there's this other story. I don't know if you are aware of it or not. So there was one of Sir CP's nephew, and this was a time when he was Shipping Corporation of India chairman. And he showed up in Mumbai, and Shimaji opened the door and said, "How come you're here?" And he said, "No, only you can save me." So Shimaji said, "Okay, come inside, come inside." So he came in, and then he told Shimaji's story that, he'd failed in his exams and his father would have, belted him. And so he ran away because, the only person who could save him was Shimaji. So she said, "Okay, fine." So Sir CP came home that evening and she made him promise that whatever I ask of you, you will do it. And Sir CP was surprised because Shimaji would never really ask him for anything. And so she said, "You've got to find, all these people with these shipping companies, you got to find him a job." So because he had promised, so then he found him a job. And at that time, because money was limited, Shimaji took her wedding ring and gave it to him to buy his uniform. So that is the extreme level to she would go in terms of her generosity. She
Who is
told me
this? Who is this person again, Uncle?
it was Sir CP's nephew. Then he went on to be quite a big.
Okay.
He got a good big job in the Merchant Navy. I don't know where. There are this
Okay.
photograph of Shimaji's from Mumbai because she would go and sometimes stay in his apartment in Mumbai. I forget his name, but and so related to that, she said, "I know how hard it is to be a housewife," because she said Sir CP used to give her 700 rupees to run the whole household, take care of the servants' salary, the children's fees, their uniforms. And she said the house was always full of people. And she said, I never asked him for his, work car. So there wasn't any other vehicle in the house. So once a month, she used to take the servant with her, take the bus, go to the wholesale market in Delhi, buy all the provisions for the month, and then in the same bus come back. So sometimes when I see these girls making all this noise, oh my God, I had to do this and I had to do this, and I'm like, she didn't have to do any of these things. She did this to set examples for us so that we learned that whatever you had, you made do in that, and you did not crib about it, nor did you, complain. So, those are things I think these children need to know. Because, uh, I sometimes even in ashrams, you see, people forget to turn off lights. If you're not using it, turn it off because it is energy. You need to be conscious of those things. If you're living together, then be mindful of the fact that this is your collective wealth and how you utilize it. Don't waste food, don't do all those kind of things. Those are all lessons which I learned from her. And if you saw, I mean, Shimadi would go and shop in any place. Like, for example, when she came to the US, she would shop at a Target, she would go to a Walmart, then she'd stop at Costco, and then she'd go to a Saks, and then she'd go to a Nordstrom. So she was not tied by human norms. Uh, um, I mean, I think in her thing it was just create the joy
And she
and
was vibrating the whole place as well.
all the
Yeah.
time, all the time, all the time. Um, Sushmita, I don't know, you asked
Could
me.
you please?
So in 1994, you've
Yeah.
heard the story of Navratri, that some old Sahaja got stabbed. That was me. I was the one who got stabbed in,
Oh, please share that.
yes, in San Diego.
Please share the whole story, please, with us.
Sure. So I used to work for a fast food chain, Taco Bell, um, and so that night when it happened, and I remember the night very clearly, it was September 3rd. And so I was working a little late because I was training somebody new as a manager. So it took a little longer, because you're showing the processes, the reports, all that which has to be done. So by the time we finished, I think it was like 1:32, and we stepped out, and this was in a shopping mall. It's called University Town Center, which was a pretty affluent area. And so when we walked to the parking lot, uh, the lights had been turned off, because it was late at night and they probably thought nobody's here now. So this guy I was teaching, he and I parted ways. He went one way, I went the opposite direction because my car was there. And when I opened my car, I felt I suddenly saw some movement in the back of the car. So I had a briefcase and I put it down and I stepped out. When I stepped out, there was somebody in my car who had a knife and he stabbed me right here on the center heart. Right. And so instinctively, my hand went on the blade and we probably grappled for, I don't know, maybe a minute or something like that. And the knife broke and the blade came in my hand. And at that point, the guy ran away. When he ran away, that's when I realized, and I fought with him. It wasn't that I was fighting for my life, but it was more a thing that, how dare somebody do that? So I realized I was, bleeding. And so I ran across, and this guy I had been training was about to drive off the ramp. And I stopped him, and poor guy was dazed because we had parted ways maybe 5-7 minutes ago. And so I got into his car and I said the guy went that way. So we kind of drove around for a couple of minutes, couldn't see him, couldn't find anyone. Then I said to him, I said, you better take me to the hospital. So there was a hospital about 2 miles away, so he took me there. Of course, they took me into there, but they didn't have a trauma center. So anyway, they did the preliminary thing, and then at some point, I was transferred to a hospital which was close by, which had a trauma center. And then, of course, they came and sewed me up. My um, Nabi finger on the left hand had been cut, and so they had to rebuild it. Um, and that's what happened, but uh, so people asked me, didn't you get frozen in fear? And I said, no, I did not. And, you'd be surprised. Never in my life had I fought with anyone. I never fought with anyone. But at that point of time, it just instinctively came to me. And I was like, no, you can't do that. And so, Shamaji told that story to so many people, so many ways, and she smiled and she laughed about it. And she said it wasn't that the goddess came to protect him, but he protected himself. But then I said, looked at her and I said, Shivaji, but where did that courage come from? It came from you, So, I mean, she kind of twisted the whole thing and put it like he saved himself. But okay, where did the courage come from? That came from her, and I would say, and so people would sometimes laugh and say to me, "Oh, we with him, so we don't have anything to fear." And I'm like, "All right, have your fun. You can laugh about it." And so those kind of
Show
things.
us your hand, Uncle. Show us that left finger that the doctor stitched up for you, and it certainly is Shri Mataji's protection in the form
Yeah,
of the
I
courage
know
she
you
had.
can see. Yeah. So they had to build it, and
Yeah.
for some time I had no sensation here. Now I can feel it. So yeah.
Okay. So before we go on to the next question, there's two things we would like to know. As Sahaja Yogi brother has requested long time back for many years, and I haven't been able to fulfill it. And it's really nice to know this reference to Yakhani Pulao that Shri Mataji made and that you made for Shri Mataji. Would you please share with us how you made it and the recipe for this vegetable and aubergine
Yeah,
pulao as
wangi
well,
bhat.
please? And what
Sure.
it is called. Thank you.
It's called wangi bhat. It's I think it's a Maharashtrian thing. Yakhani Pulao, I think Yakhani Pulao, from what I am aware, I think Shimaji's mother used to make it, so it was quite a staple in their family. And it is really flavorful, and it's different from a biryani because yakhani, first um, you have to create the broth, and you basically do that by making a portly. You take a bag of muslin cloth and you put spices in it. Primarily, you put fennel, you put coriander seeds whole, and you just crush them. And then we add some cilantro or green coriander, some lehsun, garlic cloves, and so you make this bag of that and you put it with the meat in water. And you want to put enough water so that you make a nice broth out of it. So you have to cook it on slow heat. You let it come to a boil, and then you let it simmer. So, you keep removing the scum which comes to the surface because you want to get a nice, strong, clear broth. Um, so, um, if you cook it straight on the stove, it probably takes about 1.5 to 2 hours to get that broth ready. Subsequently, then you take out the meat and you have to brown onions separately. And I can send the recipe to you, both for the wangi bhat as well as for the yakhni pulao. And
Yes,
then
please.
I'm just telling you, I'm telling you the process of it,
Yes,
the
yes,
basics.
please.
So after you take out the broth, you take out the meat and you remove the spices and everything separately. And then you let it cool down a little bit. And then the juices of the spices, you kind of dip it in the broth and then you squeeze it out because you want to get those juices into the broth. Then with the meat, you start with other spices. So this time, all the garam masalas like the shah jeera, that's the fine jeera, not the regular jeera, the shah jeera. And then you have, what do you call it? Kali mirch, black peppercorns, green cardamom, bay leaf, then cloves, cinnamon, all these spices. You kind of grind them up, but not too fine. And then you saute the meat with that. But you've got to be very careful because the meat is very tender. And if you kind of do it with a spoon or a skillet, any kind of a utensil, it can fall apart and you don't want that happening. So you have to saute it on slow and you move it around with your hands, the container. And after that has been done, the rice, you only use basmati rice for it. So you should soak the basmati rice for about half an hour. And then once the meat, you can kind of smell some of the flavors and the fragrance coming from it. Then we put the browned onions on top of the meat. Then we put the rice on top of that. And then we add the boiling stock into the pot. The ratio which I use is however much rice you're using. Say you're using 2 cups of rice. Then I add to it 1.5 times. So that would be 3 cups. Plus I add, 1 extra cup to that. And then you let it come to a boil. And then you put it on simmer. Once it goes on simmer, you actually take it off the heat and you cover it. And you actually might put a seal on it or put something on top. And then your Yakhani Pulao is ready in about 40-45 minutes. Shushmita, can we pause it for a minute because my battery is showing low, so I just need to connect my computer. With you, as I shared with you, Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Guru, was a Devi Bhakt. He was, it just is what it is. So there's a thing about that in Sahaja Yoga, you don't eat mushrooms. Both of those. So this was in Noida in 1998. I'd been cooking for her for several months. Of course, there were cooks and everything, but I would cook for her also. And one day she turned to me and she said, Manish, you never make mushrooms for me. I said, okay, Shrimaji. So next day I made mushrooms for her. The moral of the story is this, that don't just cut out anything. If you ate mushrooms once in a while, it's okay. And she specifically asked me to cook those for her. The second part of it, carnations, and so we never would buy carnations for her because there were all kinds of things. Of course, the Genda ka phool, the marigold, but I'll tell you in the early years in Delhi, we used to get these garlands made of marigold. We didn't know any better and we offered them. So if you see some photographs from 79, 80, Shiv Puja, she's got this whole thing of just marigold on her. But carnation, specifically, she turned around, she said, these are also my flowers. So, again, don't get stuck on those things. I'm telling you actual interactions with her on these points. So sometimes when I tell people, they look at me like this. I said, no, but I'm telling you, what factually happened. And, when Kana Johari land was bought in the US, this was right after I had got stabbed. So the good part of it is because I got stabbed, I was out on leave. And so Shimadi came to the US, she came to Chicago. So I wasn't working, so I was able to go and fly in there and then, be with her, cook for her and all the rest of it. So we were in New York at the Holiday Inn at LaGuardia Airport. So woke up in the morning and made tea for her like normal and, gave her the newspaper, and she was having some small talk. And suddenly her attention went to the small ad of Kana Johari. It was, I think, in the miscellaneous section, something. It was really small. And she went straight there, and she told me the leader of America at that time was Manoj. She said, Manish, call Manoj. So I called Manoj, and she said, find out about this property. So he called the realtor, and the guy said, yeah, it's available. And would you like to see it? And Shimaji said, yes. So next day we went. It's upstate New York, so it's a good 4 hours plus from New York. We went there. She saw the land. And while we were at the land, the realtor had come in a SUV and we were in a regular sedan. And he said to Shimaji, would you like to see the property mother? Because he heard us calling her Shimaji mother. And Shimaji said, yes. So she got into his car and he drove her all around the property. So the Devi actually blessed the whole property by going around it on the very first time, even before it was purchased. And she came back and she said, we are buying it. And next day the money was transferred. So when we were going back to New York, she said, now we have to celebrate. So there was a McDonald's as soon as we got on the freeway. And she said, okay, we're going to McDonald's. So we went to McDonald's and we have burgers and we had fries and we had Coke. So sometimes I have the children come to me and said, you always said that to Shmaji, when you were taking care of her, you always had water available, you had Diet Coke, and you would give her tea on occasion and all that, and our parents don't let us have Coke. So I'm just going to say to the parents that it's not such a bad thing. And if once in a while the kids have it, let them have it. And the second part of it is, especially I think for Indians, that yes, we do not eat beef. And Shimadi would say, don't eat an animal bigger than you because it affects your muscles, it affects your jaw, it affects your teeth. But she had burgers all the time. So, don't be with that mindset, break that conditioning. I don't eat beef normally, but burgers I do eat. So, wanted to tell them about. I'll tell you the story of this Sholapur, Kolhapur also. So, Shimaji used to have this joke with us that, there were 3 of us who came from the Sikh thing that, because people had started misbehaving in the Sikh faith and they would have these big turbans. And the turban is a thing of great stature and should be respected. So after the program, we were sitting with her. And what had happened is that there was a Sahaja Yogi from LA who was actually came to Sahaja Yoga through me in a way. Shimaji makes those connections. And he was younger to me. His name was Karan. And so Karan and I walked into the men's pandal. Those days, we didn't have so much money, so there used to be a tent, and there used to be 2 sides, 1 women, 1 men. And we walked in and we were there for maybe less than a minute and we ran out because people were walking around without any clothes. We'd never seen anything like that in our lives. We were shocked and appalled. So that later we were sitting with Shimaji and she could see that there was something which was bothering me. And she said, Manish, what is it? So I told her what had happened. So she kept quiet for a minute. And then she laughed and laughed and laughed. And she said, Beta, nobody has ever explained these things to them. Nobody's ever told them these things. So you have to tell them. And so I laugh sometimes because when I tell people some of those things, I said, Shimaji told me to tell those things and I haven't stopped telling them. So it's also I would tell you that we were in New York and the dean of Columbia University came to see her and Sir CP. And Sir CP used to get very enamored when, you had some of these people come because he was a bureaucrat. And he's telling Shimaji, see what he's saying. If you have a cover charge of people coming for your meeting, $1, $10, there'll be lines of people because Americans don't understand anything for free. And Shimaji looked at him and said, I'll leave without even one person, but I will never charge any money. So she was so clear on that point.
When was this incident, Uncle? Can you remind us, when was the land in Kana Johari bought and the Sholapur
Land
incident?
in Kana Johari was bought in 1994. This thing with the Columbia University, I'm trying to remember, I think it was probably 95 or 96. So,
And the Sholapur incident was in?
That was in 1982.
Okay, so very sort of early days of
Yes.
Sahaja Yoga, and not very many Sahaja Yogis at that time.
No,
Would you
the
say
tours,
the
they were, I don't remember now, but they were good 200-300, maybe
Oh,
more.
that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, so
very nice recollections and things that you have shared with us in this session. Is there anything that stands out in your memory that you'd like to share with us in terms of a miracle that happened besides the one that you've shared?
So we were in, I think it was 1986. Those were the early days of Kana Johari. And so, we didn't have our own land, nothing of the kind. Shimaji used to stay at the MTDC, that's the Maharashtra Tourism Development Corporation. They had very nice cottages overlooking the ocean. And that time, Kana Johari, Ganpati Pule was not busy. It was very, very, very few people there. It literally was beyond the villages, probably us, So they had this pandal made for Shimaji with a little stage. And I think the stage also, I'm not sure, but I think it was kind of made with mud. And so they had a little canopy over where Shimaji was sitting. And for the decoration, they had these rows of leaves. I think they call them as toran. And so they had rows and rows of that. And so one of the things which was that when a musician was performing, Shimaji did not like anyone moving or making any noise. And suddenly, during the middle of a performance, we suddenly heard some ladies giggling, and we looking at them and saying, what are you doing? Shimaji doesn't like it. We were sitting right behind Shimaji on the side of the stage, but they wouldn't stop. And they kept pointing up. And then we looked up. The Toran, and there were rows and rows of it. They were moving in perfect synchrony, total synchronization between the Torans and the music. So the music was playing and the leaves were going like this. And you know how Indian music, it goes like this and then they would go like this. And the minute it stopped, they would stop. And this went on all night. I do not know if they have it on video. Maybe they do. This happened all evening. And, you know, then we looked at Shimaji, and sometimes she would have this half smile, you know, like she's creating this thing and her children are enjoying. And then this finished probably late in night, probably early morning, like 2, 3 in the morning. And we looked up in the sky, and right above where Shimaji was sitting, there was like a big trident, a trishul, which showed in the sky, and it was shooting vibrations. And then when we drove from the place to the cottage where Shimaji was staying, right above Shimaji's cottage, there was a complete halo of vibrations, very visible, and the moon was in the middle of it. So that night, it was like, she was like, okay, let me just show you, you know, some of the miracles of, you know, what the mother does to entertain her children. So, so like that. Also, I would share with you that you've seen the photograph of Sri Ganesha behind Shimaji. That was from the 1990 Shivratri Puja in Pune. You've seen that, right, with her Sri Ganesha's face. But in the same puja, there were other photographs, and I don't know what happened to them because I haven't seen them since. There were photographs of Lenin which showed up. And I remember asking Shimaji, I said, Shimaji, Lenin? And she said, yeah, he'd come for blessings for Russia. That was a time when all that, you know, turmoil was going on in Russia.
They're
So
destroying Gorbachev.
yeah, Gorbachev, all that was happening. So this was 1990. Also, the other thing which I would like to say to Sahaja Yogis is that, you know, with children, they are her children, they are not our children. You know, of course, we are now, I told you I'm a grandparent, I understand that. But there's an old talk of Shimaji's where she said that after a person falls from being a realized soul, then he doesn't go back to being Naryoni, as you might call it. Then they become a brushed Brahmin and they become like a Rakshasa. So I don't know if people understand that point or they see that, because I see them indulging their children. Of course, children have their freedom, but it is also our responsibility to go out of the way to correct them, because they are her children put in our care. And it is our responsibility to do whatever is possible so that they stay the way they were born to us. It's a big responsibility, and you know, we just need to, you know, do what we need to do to make sure that the children are kept all right. Another story I'll tell you is, this was also the early years of Ganpati Phule. And so one year, the people decided that they weren't going to get a caterer, they were going to cook. The surgeons go to cook. Well, guess what happened? Nobody was cooking. Okay. So on the last day of Ganpati Phule, Shimaji said to me, Manish, you go and cook. I said, okay. So I went, whatever was available, you know, there were potatoes available. So I made aloo puri, you know, I served that for, I don't remember, breakfast, lunch, or whatever. And that night we were going to take the ferry from this place, which is close to Ganpati Phule, I think it's called Jaigarh, to Mumbai, Well, guess what? People heard that Shimaji was going to leave on that ferry. So whatever way they were traveling, they were making changes so that they could get on the ferry too. And I can tell you exactly that there was about maybe 2 kilos of meat. So I made sukha meat in vinegar, and I made puris, and I made um, chonke mein aloo, the dry potatoes. And so it was like probably for maybe 8 or 10 people. So we get to the place, and then I have some Sahaja Yogis come to me and say, Manish, there's no food over here, and there are all these people. I'm like, okay, look, I cannot say what is to be done or can't be done. Let me serve Shimaji, and then after that, whatever food is there can be distributed. And there were over 100 people. So I served Shimaji, and she was sitting there and eating, and then she looked at me and she did this, and so I was like, okay, the goddess is pleased, So I said, now here you go. You can do whatever you want. I don't know how, but people got something to eat. So, uh, how these things happen, um, I have no idea. But I mean, we used to see all these things happening. So it was no longer a miracle. It was like, oh, yeah, another thing happened.
Yes.
You know?
Which year was this?
This bete was probably, I'm thinking, 87 or 88, probably. It was the year when the Sahaja Yogis decided that they were going to cook, and then people didn't take up on the responsibility that they said that they wanted to do. So that kind of thing. Also, you had asked a question about starting centers. So in 19, talking about it, 85 or 86, I think, Shimaji made me a trustee in Delhi. This was when the Delhi temple was being built. And so all the other uncles were much older to me. I was this young guy who was like 27 years old. And, there was Uncle Venugopalan, who was the tax commissioner of Delhi. There used to be Uncle Subramaniam. There was Uncle Verma. There was Uncle Rai, And so I think one of them went to Shimaji and said, he's so young, Shimaji. Shimaji said, I know what I'm doing. But I'll just say this, even though I was a trustee, I never ever challenged them. It was not my job to challenge them. It was my job to look after the trust the way, Shimaji intended. So the temple was being built. So my thing was, whatever Shimaji is saying, that should happen. I never understood having an alternate to what she had said, because I understood that obedience to her was absolute. There was no this or that, or no, maybe we can do this. No. If she said it's day, then it's day. If it's night, it's night. And one kept it like that. So I think even with children, because these days you have councils, then you have coordinators, then God knows what, that respect for an elder should be there. And there shouldn't be any challenging. And if you have to say something to them, then learn the art of how to say it. Because you can say the same thing respectfully without being, how to say, contentious. So that is also the art of how to talk to people. And so we learned that. And then it was in, I think it was 86 or 87. Hyderabad hadn't started. And I went to Hyderabad. I was working at a hotel over there. It's called the Banjara Hotel. It was a Hiro, can you please stop that because I haven't finished? So there was a group of people, there were like 4 or 5 families which lived a little bit outside Hyderabad at that time in the DRDL colony. It was a Defense Research Laboratory. And they used to do Sahaja Yoga amongst themselves. And I said to them, I said, that can't be. It's meant for the masses. You know, you don't have any of the locals here. So then we decided to do a public program, and we hired a hall in a place, I think it's called Kachiguda. And so needed somebody to speak in Telugu because, you know, that was the local language. So then there used to be an Uncle Murthy from Madras, and he's the one who first invited Shimaji to the south part of India. And so I called Uncle and I said, Uncle, I need you here. And he said, Manish, I'll be there. So he came down and he spoke to them in Telugu. 200 people came for that program. And out of that, then 50 came back the next day for the follow-up, and they stayed on. And that's how Sahaja Yoga started in Hyderabad. You know, other people asked me about, I'm forgetting his name, Goel. They said, oh, he was there. I said, no, he came later. But that's how it started in Hyderabad. And then in Bangalore, Uncle Murthy's son-in-law and daughter, Manorma and Manohar, were there. And they were kind of doing Sahaja Yoga in their own home. Maybe they had one more family which came there. So 2 years later, I moved to Bangalore. And, you know, then we started doing more programs. Then, you know, Bangalore also started. And then 1990, I came to the US, you know, and been here since. And that's an interesting story because, you know, I had a work visa and I'm still waiting for my green card. So my family was in India. And so around 94, 95, I think, 96, somebody said, hey, why don't you apply for migration to Canada? You know, you have the qualifications, all that. You know, this is taking time. So I said, okay. So I submitted my papers to Canada and some Sahaja Yogis in Canada got me an attorney. All the rest of it happened. And then there was a due date for it. I mailed the papers. It went by express mail. It was supposed to reach the next day. Somehow the papers disappeared. They got lost. They didn't show up for a good, I don't know, 4 days or a week. So it was after due date. And Shimaji came to the US and said, Manish, what's happening with your immigration? And I said, Shimaji, well, nothing, but I've applied to Canada. And she looked at me and she said, no, it's the US. And then I laughed because the papers had disappeared. So, you know, so it wasn't what she wanted, you know, but that's also another lesson, that listen to what she's saying. Don't try to do your 2 bits on it because we think we are smarter, but we're not. So that story also, yeah.
Fantastic. I'm really grateful to you, Uncle, for sharing these stories with us. It is nearly midnight and there are people deep in meditation here. So I would like to take your leave. They have been very patient and I thank them for their understanding. And I thank you for taking this time out. We will rearrange another session at some point. Really, really
No,
grateful to you. Thank you so much for
you're very
sharing
welcome. I'll take
valuable
photographs
insight.
of the recipes and send them to you.
Yes, please do, because then we can share it with the video link and then
Yeah,
everyone can enjoy that. And
right.
thank you again. And all thanks to Shri Mataji for making this possible on the eve of Shri Adi Shakti Puja 2025. Thank you, Jai Shri Mataji. Jai Shri Mataji.